Hi Morgan. I'm not sure why the first part of this lesson would not upload. I tried it multiple times and I couldn't get it up on YouTube. It just would say that it's processing. So I don't know what was wrong with part one because part two went right up with no hitch. So I'm going to try to describe to you the first part of our class. So write down these we're going to be studying trig integrals, and we're going to get comfortable with finding trig in our integrals. So if you could start writing down this list, I'll go over those. These are old news. I'm going to get my phone so I can time this. All right. I'll just put 10 minutes at a time. That kind of uploads pretty quick when it's 10 minutes at a time. So let me get my stopwatch going here. All right. Some of the integrals that are trigonometric that we know from the past are like the sine of x dx. And the sine of x, its integral, sometimes I just guess. I say, I'll guess cosine of x. So then I take in my head, I say, what is the derivative of cosine x? And I remember that that's negative sine x, so it doesn't match. So that shows that I did it wrong, and I adjust it. So I don't know how you'd go about it, but I know the derivatives more than the integrals, so I kind of use those to actually do the integrals. Cosine of x, its integral, is a regular positive sine. And tangent, you should be able to get from remembering this trig ID. Did you remember that tangent is sine over cosine? It's one of the basic trig IDs. So if I rewrite it like that, do you see that if this is my u, this is almost my du, because the derivative of cosine is negative sine. So if I put in a negative and then put one on the outside, I end up right away with negative an integral of du over u, which is in this case negative ln absolute value cosine x plus c. All right, so I would like you to be able to calculate that, but you have to remember that sine over cosine is the same as tangent. So cotangent is going to be the flip idea. So it'll be cosine over sine. That'll be the trig ID that gets us through that. And here we have our u under our du exactly with no adjustments. So we get the integral of du over u, which in this case is going to be ln of sine x. And always plus c. All right, so let's go on to the next one that we should know, and that is secant x. Now this one might be a little harder to remember, and there's actually a trick to actually finding it. And the trick is probably harder to remember than the actual integral, but here goes. We're going to multiply the top by secant x tangent x and the bottom by secant x tangent x. I wrote u. Okay. All right. So x. So when I do that, notice the top becomes secant squared x plus secant tan, and the bottom is secant x plus tangent x. All right, so now this is behind the integral sign. Do you notice something that I could do now? Actually, if you recall from derivative land, what is the derivative of secant? It is secant tan. And what is the derivative of tangent? It is secant squared. So if we call this down here our u, this is exactly our du. So with that little trick, we can integrate secant, and it comes out to be ln of this denominator. Secant x plus tangent x under between absolute value there plus c. All right, so moving right along, cosecant, if we multiply it by sort of the cousin, cosecant x plus cotangent x over itself, cosecant x plus cotangent x. All right, then the new top will become cosecant squared. Cosecant squared x plus cotangent. Let me get rid of this problem overlap. All right, cosecant x cotangent x over cosecant x plus cotangent x. So all behind the integral sign. So it turns out that the derivative from derivative land of this is negative cosecant cotangent, and the derivative of this is negative cosecant squared. So we do need a negative up top in the num, so we'll pull one out. But then we do have a du over u situation, so we have negative ln absolute value of cosecant x plus cotangent x plus c. All right. All right, if there's something you're not following, I can explain it a little slower and in person. So hopefully that gets you through the first, the six basic trig functions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 basic trig functions. They're integrals. Now, I was wondering if I could find some more integrals that we know. And thinking back to derivative land, you can tell the answer to this, because the derivative of tangent is secant squared. So the integral of secant squared would take us back to tangent. In like manner, can you figure out what the integral of cosecant squared x is? Well, from derivative land, we recall that the derivative of cotangent is negative cosecant squared x. So if I just have positive here, I end up with a negative cotangent x plus c. So are there others that we can borrow from derivative land? There are. So let's go borrow those. Secant tan, that kind of came up in the middle of one of the ones we did already. So secant tan comes out to be secant x plus c, because the derivative of secant is secant tan. And close cousin, this one turns out to be negative cosecant. And lastly, this one comes sort of not out of left field, but in another way of thinking, I believe that you can do this one. So see if you can do it. Just pause, see what you can do with that, and then watch me do it. This, if we call this our u, then the derivative of sine is cosine, so I have my du. So I have the integral of u du, which integrates to u squared over 2 plus c, which in this case, looking back here, what was my u? It was sine x. So coming up here, I get sine squared x over 2 plus c. All right, when we look at that one, we are going to be most inspired to do our work for today. So this is going to be sort of the key for doing today. And when I speak of keys, I need to give you a trig ID that is key. So let me draw a key here. And sort of like, that's my key. And the key trig ID that we need for the rest of this lesson, sine squared x plus cosine squared x equals 1. So that's a blast from the past. So hang on to that key because we are going to use it. Let's go ahead then, and I'll close down this video, and the really new stuff will be on part 2. So I already have one that I put up online that's called part 2, but your part 1 has turned into we'll say part 1A and part 1B. So I'll call them that, but you actually have 3 parts. So I'm going to shut this one down and pick it up I have 2 examples to do for the new stuff using this key and going from there. So I'll be right back.